So Philips has gone full gaming with this one, and I for one am all for it, as I know that they do produce some decent OLED panels, which we've experienced here on the TechNuovo channel in the past. Card in the corner if you wanted to check those out. But I was excited to check this one out because of their quality OLED panels. I wanted to see if their proper true gaming panels could compete. So let's talk about it. The panel just behind me here is called the 25M2N5200U. It's a 25-inch 1080p 390Hz overclocked refresh rate IPS panel. I also wanted to point out that there are two versions of this monitor, because if it's anything like that AOC video I did a while ago, again card in the corner, I'm going to be accused many times in the comments of giving the wrong information. On the Philips website, there's a 25M2N5200U, which is the 390Hz panel, and a 5200p, which is the 280Hz panel. So please do your own research and buy the right one. We're talking about the U version in this video and not the other one. Remember that. The U version, the 390Hz version. So I suppose it's only a 1080p panel, but of course driving 390Hz in its overclocked mode isn't going to be very easy at higher resolutions, especially on eSports titles. Something like Hollow Knight, sure, it'll run very smoothly, but for CS2 above 1080p, you're going to need a beefy PC to keep up with a consistent 390Hz FPS. However, testing out the monitor using my OSRTT tool brought back some less than ideal results while testing its greater grey response times, especially when it came to the percentage that each test spent in window, which was incredibly low. So first I did test at 390Hz, putting this monitor into its overdrive mode, running its smart response in fast, and it gave me an average initial time of 5.83, though it only spent 6.67% in window. This didn't really improve too much more through its smart response modes, and at faster, its initial time was 4.59 with a 30% in window, and fastest an initial time of 3.71 and a 20% in window. At 300Hz, this was more of the same, though lowering the refresh rate down to 240 in its fast mode saw a 4.6 average initial time and spent 50% in window. Still not great, but at least it's moving in the right direction. Jumping up to fastest though saw an average initial time of 2.99, which is fantastic, but then it did only spend 30% in window. And at 144Hz fast mode, it managed a 5.66 average initial time, but this time it spent a whopping 73.33% in window, which is a lot better. And putting this up to its fastest mode saw an initial time of 2.98, again super good, but it dropped significantly down to 23.33% in window. Okay, so this is somewhat frustrating because its best and most consistent grey-to-grey response time is happening at 144Hz, though this is a 390Hz monitor, which poses a question on why you would run this monitor in 390Hz in the first place. But running a UFO ghosting test, you'd absolutely see that 390Hz, the monitor is more than capable of producing a sharp moving image with minimal blurring, though not completely out of the woods. Dropping this refresh rate down to 240Hz proved to still give a decent image, but as you can see, blurring is a bit more consistent, though keep it on the fast smart response setting here, because going up to fastest, the inverse ghosting does start to creep in. And at 144Hz, even though your grey-to-grey response time is decent, blurring is pretty heavy here, and even faster smart response modes, you can really see some heavy inverse ghosting. And because of the lack of consistency in the grey-to-grey response times, it is quite hard actually to give a definitive mode on this panel to give you the best performance. Running a data color Spider Elite gamut test gave me a color gamut of 98% sRGB, 79% Adobe RGB, 79% P3 and 74% NTSC. In its sRGB mode, however, it achieved 94% sRGB, so go figure there, 70% Adobe ARGB, 70% P3 and 65% NTSC, so it did fare a lot worse for color within the sRGB mode, including the sRGB gamut itself, which I thought was bizarre, so I kept that switched off. And it was the same within the color accuracy test as well. In its native mode, it achieved an average delta E of 1.03 and a maximum of 5.76, but that came down to the blue colors, as you can see on the screen, and in the sRGB mode it gave an average delta E of 1.19 and a maximum of 6.04, so really not too much different here, but worse in the sRGB image mode. When it came to brightness, the monitor hit a max brightness of 384 nits with a contrast ratio of 790 to 1, which is lacking somewhat for an IPS display, I must say, and a white point of 8100, which is terrible. Color uniformity at 100% brightness also performed awfully, with some real dark spots in the bottom left and right hand corners and a really bright spot in the top middle segment. And at 50% brightness, this wasn't much better, with the bottom corners faring much worse. Now, luminance uniformity at 100% brightness though fared rather well, only really falling down slightly towards the bottom right hand side, but not really anything too bad really. And at 50% brightness, it was rather the same. Let's just say in the nicest possible way that this monitor hasn't benchmarked very well when it comes to its performance. Though I must say now that for productivity, I didn't really get on with this monitor at all anyway, coming from a 1440p panel. Because of scaling issues with 1080p panels and DaVinci Resolve and Photoshop and those kind of things, but a 390Hz 1080p panel isn't aimed at people like me who want to do a bit of editing and a bit of productivity. It is a gaming monitor through and through, and when it comes to playing games, it performed rather well. I didn't notice really in any real time the issues outlined here with the color uniformity of the panel, though bleeding in very dark environments isn't exactly controlled very well, as seen in this admittedly not very scientific photo of the panel in a dark room. The monitor is rather plain looking though, with minimal branding on the front, which I imagine would suit gamers down to a T, and there's also no garish RGB either. It's a no-frills gaming monitor that actually looks quite nice on the desk, with very small bezels. It's a grey-like colour, which falls in line with the Evnia style. Its stand has that recycled plastic marbled look, and the arm at the back has a height, swivel and tilt adjustment. It's got VESA 100 mounting capabilities, as seen in the video, and as we're talking about the rear of the panel, you can find a single DisplayPort 1.4 and two HDMI 2.0 ports for you console gamers. And inside of the OSD, it is pretty simple to navigate thanks to the joystick on the back, and most notably you can find all of your gaming features in the second menu, including a crosshair overlay and a boost to the shadows. It also features HDR 400, but it's alright. But there are absolutely better implementations of HDR out there for sure. Now, for media in general though, because of that color accuracy, the panel isn't bad for things like YouTube and some Netflix during your lunch break if you work from home. And all of this for the MSRP of £329 here in the UK, I think for a gaming panel of this caliber is actually quite a steal. It's absolutely aimed at the budget conscious esports gamer, and notice I said esports there, it is not for everyone, especially if you're more of a single player gamer. Save some cash and get a lesser hertz panel, or go for a larger 27 to 32 inch panel. And yes, I know in terms of benchmarking, this monitor has fallen down quite a bit in color uniformity, but for a gaming panel, it definitely is something to behold, because if you can hit that 390Hz refresh rate consistently, then you're going to be laughing all the way to the bank on this one. But yeah, this isn't a panel for productivity, that's for sure. But for a bit of Netflix here or there, it would be absolutely fine.